The Oak Ridge Reservation holds an important place in our nation's history, and it continues to be a vital part of our national security and scientific research community. But parts of the reservation require cleanup as a result of decades of energy research. The U.S. Department of Energy looks to the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board as the voice of the community on environmental issues. You're welcome to attend meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board to learn more. Call us or visit our website.
Welcome everybody to our monthly meeting. I'd like to remind our guests to please sign in at the front and use your name tags to be recognized. Also, if you want to speak, please use the microphone. I'd like to remind the members, please use your name tags to be recognized and also use the microphones. After our presentation, we will have a question and answer period, after which questions from the members will be taken first, and then we'll have questions from the public. Our next meeting will be our annual planning meeting, which will be Saturday, August 18th. It will be held at the Holiday Inn in Pigeon Forge. At this point, I'm going to introduce Jenny Freeman, who will be our facilitator for our annual planning meeting. Jenny, can you take a moment and speak a little of that?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Freeman. Everybody doing all right tonight? Glad to be here. I am. I'm your facilitator for your annual planning meeting, and I'm really looking forward to it. And Spence and Pete and the staff wanted me to come and introduce myself. I was hoping to get here a little early so I could go around and meet you individually, but that didn't happen because of work, my work duties. But I'll get to know you as time gets closer, and certainly at the annual meeting in August. A little bit about me. I actually was on this board for a short time, wasn't I, David? And really enjoyed my short tenure here. I love these boards. I really love these site-specific advisory boards. I facilitated the Savannah Riverside Citizens Advisory Board for 3 years. Just had a great time working with that board on a very detailed and involved level year after year. It was a great experience. I've also worked with the Northern New Mexico cab as well, so it's just been a great pleasure of mine to get to know these cabs and certainly this board. I really respect the work that you do coming from the public and just walking into this and trying to understand technical issues if you haven't grown up in the nuclear world and what's involved in that. It's so important that we have a cross-section of public represented on these boards. I just totally respect what you guys are doing, and I'm really looking forward to the annual meeting in August. We've got a great agenda. We're working on it. We've tweaked it a little bit. Your planning committee's working hard. Where is that planning committee? Y'all raise your hands just so we can... Maggie, you're on it, yeah. Well, planning committee's working hard. It's a great group to work with. We're tweaking the agenda a little bit to make it more dynamic, make it more informative for you. I think you'll like what we put together. And every year we did this at Savannah Riverside, and every year surveys are given to members of the Site-Specific Advisory Board. You new members didn't get a survey, and that's okay because you don't have a frame of reference from which to fill them out. The old members, you guys know who you are, either are in the process or you have filled them out. I hope they're up at the front desk because I'll be taking those with me, compiling information, and giving you a call. Faye, so are you a new member or an old member? You're I shouldn't have asked that question, should I, Faye?
Well, it's nearly a year.
Okay, good. Well, anyway, we'll be compiling the information and trying to give you feedback on some ideas that you'll have about board processes and that sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to August, to the meeting. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask me at this point? All right. Well, I'll see you in August, if not before. And again, Spence and Pete know how to get in touch with me. If you've got any ideas, just they'll know how to find me, so send me your ideas. Maggie, is that good?
That's great.
Thank
you very much. Appreciate that. Let's move on. Sue Kane's just going to introduce some of our new members tonight. Sue?
Good evening, everybody.
We have a lot of new members that are joining us. It's like, I feel like we had a class in the fall that came in, and now a class in the summer that's coming in. And I must say that in looking over everyone's resumes and the brief introductions I'm going to give for everyone, I'm really quite impressed with the backgrounds and amount of experience of everyone, and I think that this is going to be a great group that's going to come in and hopefully mesh real well with the existing group. So welcome to all the new members, and I'm going to just go through and tell everyone a little bit about you. So first and foremost, we have Elfrida Cook, who is, there she is. Hello, Elfrida. I understand that you live in Oak Ridge. And that you're retired from UCOR, which is one of EM's cleanup contractors here on the reservation, where you worked as a waste performance integration manager until January of 2012. Elfrida previously worked as a data systems analyst and a computing analyst, and she received her BS in organizational management from Tusculum College. So welcome. We're very glad to have you. Next is Mr. Bruce Hicks. There he is on the same side. Bruce lives in Norris and is the sole proprietor of Metcor Inc., which provides consulting services to NASA and the Department of Human Services on issues related to the ways in which components of the environment interact. I understand, Bruce, that you retired in 2006 from NOAA, where you served as the director of the Air Resources Laboratory, and that you received your BS in physics and mathematics from the University of Tasmania and your MS in meteorology from the University of Melbourne. So welcome. Okay, next we have Jennifer Caston. Jennifer, there she is. Jennifer lives in Knoxville and is a retired nuclear environmental engineer, most recently employed at the TVA Watts Bar Nuclear Power Plant. Previously, Jennifer worked in the Nuclear Engineering Department at UT and at ORNL on gaseous diffusion plant safety issues and radioactive waste research. She received her BS in biology from Valparaiso University and her BS in civil/environmental engineering and MS in nuclear/radiological engineering from UT. So welcome, Jennifer. I'm sure you'll be a very important resource to the group with your experience. Next we have Jan Lyons. Hello, Jan. Jan lives in Oak Ridge and is retired from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, where she worked as an adjunct professor in the Engineering Management, Information, and Systems Department. Previously, Jan was employed by Lockheed Martin Energy Systems as a staff systems engineer, cost research manager, training instructor, and information technology manager. She received her BA in economics from the College of William and Mary, her MS in software engineering from Clemson University, and her PhD in industrial and systems engineering and engineering management from the University of Alabama. Welcome. Next we have Donald May. Donald might be a little familiar through association to some of you. His wife Gloria recently retired from the board, and we're glad to exchange one May for another. So welcome. Donald lives in Oak Ridge and is a retired engineer who was employed from 1986 to 2007 by Duke Energy in Charlotte. Before that, Donald worked in the Health Physics Division of the Institute of Nuclear Energy Research in Taiwan. He received his BS in physics from Chang Kung University in Taiwan and his MS in health physics from UT, and also his PhD in nuclear engineering from Kansas State University. So welcome to you. And finally, last but not least, we have Scott Stout, located there. Hello, Scott. Scott lives in Rockwood and is the Assistant Director of the Office of Emergency Services for Roane County. He received his BA in Liberal Arts from Tennessee Wesleyan College and his Hazmat Specialist certification from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. So once again, I just want to wish all of you a warm welcome. We are very appreciative of your willingness to serve on the board and to dedicate the time that you will be spending with us. And again, I'm just so impressed with everyone's credentials and your experience, and I think you'll all be a very welcome addition. So that's it.
Thank you, Sue. Certainly welcome all the new members and look forward to working with all of you. We'll move on now to the comments from our liaisons, and Sue, I'll put you right back on the hot plate.
Okay, just a few brief updates on what's going on here in the cleanup program on the Oak Ridge Reservation. One thing I did want to mention is that Mr. John Kruger, who is the Federal Project Director for the Uranium-233 project, and I had a unique opportunity on Monday to fly up to D.C. and to brief Secretary Chu on the status of the Uranium-233 project. And it was indeed a very worthwhile experience. It was a very small setting in his office. We got to sit around on the couch with him and talk about the status of the project and our accomplishments, and he was really quite pleased and complimentary towards Oak Ridge. So I think that was a really good experience for Oak Ridge, for him to be able to learn about what we're doing with uranium-233. Another thing that might be on some people's minds is the status of historic preservation at the East Tennessee Technology Park. I believe last month we reported that we had issued a memorandum of agreement to all of the signatory and consulting parties and had requested signature for finalization of that memorandum of agreement by this Friday, July 13th. So of the 4 signatory parties, we have received 2 of the signatures, and we've received comments from a third party and are hoping to receive some comments from the 4th party this week. So I don't think we'll have a fully executed memorandum of agreement this week, but I do believe that we are on the path towards having one, certainly, I hope, by the end of this month. We also have received some signatures from the consulting parties, and so I won't go through each and every one of those, but we have received a few of those and expect to get a few more in. And I guess the Site-Specific Advisory Board is a consulting party to that memorandum of agreement, and I understand, Maggie, that you were going to proceed with signing.
That's correct, I just did.
So very good, thank you very much. So we're making progress. We're not there yet. Dave is working very hard to get us there, and I'm still optimistic that we will have a memorandum of agreement which will allow our cleanup contractor, UCOR, to be able to proceed with the demolition activities of the K-25 building without any sort of delay. So that was it. Just wanted to mention those few things.
Thank you. Dave?
Just one thing. Every year about this time of year, the board asks us to provide to them in writing a listing of the areas that we would like the board to focus on for the following year. It's always sequenced so as to be available in advance of the August retreat. We are in the midst of production of that list. It will be out ahead of the date you asked us to get it out by. It will contain no surprises. A couple of new things we'd like for the group to focus on, but I just wanted to mention that it is underway and it will be on time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dave? Okay, we'll move on to our EPA liaison, Connie Johns.
Thank you. I don't have any announcements to make, but I'd be more than happy to try to answer questions if asked. Thank you.
Okay. John Owsley with TDEC.
Thank you, ma'am. I also have no announcements to make, but would be glad to attempt to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our public comment period. We'll open that up with Chuck Jensen.
The public comment period is now open. Please state when you come to the microphone, wherever that is. Please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. And on the sign-up sheet, I see that we have a non-stranger that would like to speak.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Norman Mulvenin. I am currently the chair or the vice chair of the Citizens Oversight Panel, and I am previously a member of the board for 6 years and have been attending meetings here since 1997. So I'm qualified to make a comment or two. And speaking of that, I'd like to encourage you to listen very carefully tonight to your presentation. Mr. Jack Hanley is a very good friend of mine, and he should be a good friend of yours too. ATSDR has done us a real service to analyze all of the elements and the things that were involved in the production of weapons here in the reservation over the years, and they have given us a clean bill of health. And he's going to explain that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Thank you. As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate in our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. The appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meetings and schedule and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the presentation portion of our evening. The topic is a public health assessment of Y-12 Mercury releases at the DOE Oak Ridge Reservation. The presenter this evening will be Jack Hanley. Jack is an environmental health scientist with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry in Atlanta. As the agency's site leader for the Oak Ridge Reservation Superfund site since 1993, he is responsible for public health evaluations of off-site human exposure to chemical and radiological releases from the reservation. He received his master's in public health degree in environmental and occupational health from Emory University School of Public Health. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back here before the SSAB. It's been a few years. I see there are a few individuals that I've worked with over the years, John Osley, Dave Adler, and Constance Jones, and good to see you, Faye. It's been a while since I've get to see you. But I think for most of you, this is the first time I've met you, and you're going to get to hear from me. And I'm sure many of you are wondering, what is ATSDR? And are not familiar with our activities here in Oak Ridge. So this evening, I'm going to give a quick introduction of ATSDR, basically who is ATSDR and what we do, and then try to real quickly give an overview of our public health activities and some of our findings here at Oak Ridge over the years. Just a broad overview. And I understand most of my effort is going to be focused on the Y-12 Mercury release public health assessment. That's our document we released on the issue of mercury, and to try to clarify some of the issues regarding the current exposure. I'm not going to focus too much on the past, but mainly the current exposure issues. So as we get started here, ATSDR is the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. We're the principal federal public health agency charged with evaluating human health exposures to hazardous substances in the environment. ATSDR is a part of the Department of Health and Human Services, which is independent of what EPA and independent of DOE. We're based out of Atlanta. Many of the people look at us as a sister agency to the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC in Atlanta. In fact, the administrator of my agency actually wears two hats. He's also the director of the Centers for Disease Control. Congress created ATSDR to develop the health-related, sorry guys. Sorry about that. Congress created ATSDR to develop the health-related sections of the CERCLA and the SARA amendments, commonly known as Superfund. And these two acts provide, and this is a key thing here, we're an advisory, non-regulatory public health agency, and we deal with the non-regulatory public health authorities within the Superfund regulation. That's a key issue there. We're directed to perform a variety of functions regarding hazardous substances in the environment. Today, I'm going to focus on the public health assessment, the health consultation, and education and training, because that's some of the things that we did here in Oak Ridge. In a nutshell, our public health assessment is an evaluation of releases of contaminants in the environment. And it identifies where people might have been exposed and how they might have been exposed. We determine, is the site a hazard, a public health hazard? And then we make recommendations to safeguard the health of the public. We work with the community, environmental groups, and all the agencies. Here at the Oak Ridge Reservation, we've conducted a variety of activities. We've involved the public. You're going to see we're deeply involved with engaging the public, getting their issues, and addressing their issues. We've made public health evaluations and drawn conclusions based on environmental data, health data, and the community information, site-specific community information we gain from the public. We use the best and available science at the time, and we try to provide an independent, objective public health decisions based on the issues that are put before us. And when necessary, we can collect additional information. And here at Oak Ridge, we did some of this. We did a follow-up. We have follow-up public health actions, such as an exposure investigation, or we could do limited environmental sampling, and we can do health studies. If we find that there's a need to do a health study, we can move forward and get that done. We've held public meetings. We've explained the results of our evaluations. We've responded to over 500 community health concerns and addressed them in our documents over the years. We provided environmental health education and to healthcare providers here in the Oak Ridge area, and then also the communities around the general area. And when appropriate, we've referred individuals to specialists in environmental medicine where we thought it might be necessary so that they can get some follow-up health care. All of our documents include the public comments and our peer review comments. We include them in our final document so you can see the issues that people brought before us and maybe didn't quite agree with us. We put their comments right into the documents. And when issues fall outside our scope, our mandate, public health issues, we turn those over to the state or local or federal agency that is responsible for those actions. There are a few things that we do not do and we cannot do. And one of them is to conduct large-scale environmental sampling. That is within the Federal Facility Agreement. That's with DOE, TDEC, and EPA. They handle that aspect of it. We do not enforce regulations. As I previously said, we're an advisory, non-regulatory public health agency. And we don't provide medical treatment, as I just mentioned. We refer individuals to specialists in environmental medicine. There's an association of occupational and environmental clinics where they have specialists in this area that if we thought it was appropriate that someone needed some help, we would refer them to those individuals for follow-up. Okay, since '91, we have worked with the communities surrounding Oak Ridge reservations, and we've evaluated and addressed their public health issues. And many times, a lot of these activities are initiated by the public asking us, raising questions, and we try to come in and address those issues. And another key thing here, at Oak Ridge, ATSDR we focus our efforts on exposures that occur off the reservation. They're off the site, outside the fence. So occupational exposures inside the fence, we don't get involved in those. Those are OSHA or NIOSH could come in. NIOSH is a sister agency, non-regulatory agency. They can help with those issues. And one time we actually called them in and they came in and did an investigation. So since in the 90s when we first got involved, we conducted 3 health consultations. Health consultations are evaluations of a specific issues. And we looked at where we're responding to concerns regarding Superfund activities going on at the lower East Fork Poplar Creek and the Wattsboro Reservoir. These concerns were about the current and future exposures. It wasn't regarding the past, it was about ongoing activities regarding the chemical and radiological contaminants in these 2 areas off the reservation. Besides addressing those concerns in our evaluation, our findings were used by EPA, DOE, and TDEC, and they were incorporated in the record of decision for East Fork, Poplar Creek, and Wattsboro. And Wattsboro is a good example of the progression of our work. You can see here we evaluated the chemical and radiological contaminants in the reservoir. Based on that finding, we found that PCBs were the only PCBs in fish were the only contaminant of potential health concern for people that ingest large quantities of fish. The estimates indicated that, dose estimates. So what we ended up doing is we worked with the community and we worked with the local oversight committee and the state officials, and we developed a physician education program. We had a couple of meetings down in Spring City, Kingston, and then they had a meeting with the physicians at the Oak Ridge Hospital right here in town, the Methodist Medical Center, and we had a physician from Chicago at the Great Lakes Center that was very familiar with PCBs and a specialist in that area. He came in and presented to the physicians. We also had a fish advisory. We worked with the LOC and the state-owned. And then what we did, and I'm going to go over this a little later, as I said, our estimates indicated that the PCBs were a health issue. DOE's risk assessment indicated PCBs in fish were a potential increase in risk. So, as I said, it's estimates, it's models. So what we ended up doing is we came in and we did an exposure investigations where we measured the actual levels of PCBs in people's serum that's in their blood, and while we were at it, we looked at the mercury levels in the people that were consuming large amounts of fish. And I'll cover this a little later. We also had a FACA, very similar to this one, a Federal Advisory Committee. It was called the Oak Ridge Reservation Health Effects Subcommittee. Between 2000 and 2005, we had 25 subcommittee meetings, 125 work group meetings. They evaluated a variety of issues. At the time, there was a concern and belief that there was a need for medical monitoring of individuals in the area, and there was a need for health clinics. And they looked into that issue and addressed that issue. They critically reviewed epidemiologic studies. We had epidemiological workshops, how to evaluate health studies. We worked with these individuals, we explained it to them, and they learned how to critique studies so that when we presented it to them, they understood what we were talking about. They approved our plan, and they approved of our approach to do 9 health assessments. And they actually, they approved some of the documents before we disbanded the group. The group, we were running out of money and we couldn't go any further, so we disbanded the group. But before that, they approved of our process and our documents. And also the key thing is they helped bring all the unresolved health issues that were out there, lingering out there by a variety of people in the surrounding communities. And we included those in our documents, and we addressed each one of those. As I said, it was over 500. And they made a variety of other recommendations to our public health activities going on at Oak Ridge. So, as I said, we did 9 health assessments during this time period. All this information is on our website. If you go to our ATSDR website, Oak Ridge right now is actually highlighted. You click on that, you can search by community, you can search by the facility, or you can just follow it by the timeline, the progression of our work. It's all on the website. And it provides details of the thick detailed reports, summary reports. We have videos that explain our work. It's all on the website. And basically, our overall findings for 8 of the 9 health assessments, that excludes the Mercury report, because I'm going to get to that when I talk to you guys about it, is that past and current off-site exposures to releases were below levels, where there actually was exposure, were below levels that could cause health effects. Also, we try to see, should we do any follow-up work? Should we do any follow-up epidemiologic work? And additional epidemiologic studies or medical monitoring, we believe, and based on the findings, is that it's not warranted or scientifically appropriate right now to do that. And as I said, we address the health concerns. Many of the health concerns you may hear people mention over the years. If it's a Mercury issue, you go look in the Mercury document, there's a whole section of concerns and issues people have brought to us, and we have our answers right there. So you can find answers to, I would say, just about any health issue that comes before you is likely to be in our document. Now, there are some limitations in the data that prohibited us from adequately estimating exposures, estimating doses, and determining if there was any potential past exposures of concern. And there's 3 of them here. For time, I just won't go through them, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to talk to you about those. Okay, here we go to the public health assessment. To get a feel of the geographic layout, I know some of you are new to this process. There's a handout here. There's a map here from our document. And if you look at here, you can see the Y12 complex. And from that Y12 complex, there's a little blue line that goes kind of north, and then it follows Highway 62. And if you look at it, and then it turns west along the turnpike, that's the East Fork Poplar Creek, where it leaves the reservation and goes into the city, throughout the city, then goes back into DOE complex over by K25, and then it goes into East Fork Poplar Creek, which flows into the Clinch River, and then ultimately into the Wattsboro Reservoir. Just brief history here, the highest offsite releases occurred in the 50s and early 60s from the production of enriching lithium-6. And there was one process called Colex. It went on between 55 and 63. That's where the majority of the substantial amount of mercury was released during those years there. Since then, there's been a relatively smaller amounts of mercury have been released from secondary sources, and I'm sure they've talked about those. If you turn the page of the handout, there's another figure there on figure 9, and it shows the creek leaving the Y12 plant, which is the blue area, and it shows the floodplain area, the 100-year floodplain, and how it passes through along Illinois Avenues, Highway 62, and then heads on over to the Turnpike. And then if you turn the page again, figure 19 shows you shows you again the floodplain, and then there's two areas along that floodplain where the levels of mercury were elevated. So that just gives you a broad view of what we were studying. Now, the scope of our work included current and past exposures to mercury from 1950 to 2009. And we evaluated the three forms of mercury. And if you turn the page again in the handout, there's a table here. It's table 7. And there's the three forms of mercury. And then over here you have the primary exposure pathways and the primary target audience, target organ. Each mercury, you're exposed to it differently. And the health effect could be different. And the toxicity is different. So mercury is not mercury. It's different. There's different forms. So elemental mercury, which you normally would see, metallic mercury, people used to play with. It's an inhalation exposure, and it primarily affects the central nervous system. Inorganic mercury is what you find in the soil and in the water. Through the ingestion of those media, that's how you get exposed to it. Its primary target organ is the kidney, and the latest stuff is coming out as autoimmune. They have a little autoimmune responses that they have found in mice. And then you have organic mercury. That's methyl mercury. That's the mercury that's in the fish. And its ingestion of fish is the primary exposure. And the exposure to a pregnant woman or woman nursing is the effect is it has a neurodevelopmental effect on the offspring. And it's a slight, if it's the low doses that you normally find in fish, especially around, you find in fish, and they find this in offshore fish. They find this all over. EPA has major programs on all this. It's not just an Oak Ridge issue. There's mercury in a variety of fish around the country, around the world. And they have FDA and EPA have advisories. We actually have their advisory in our document. It explains all about the hazards of it. Is that there's a subtle neurodevelopmental effect, and I'll talk about that. And so we evaluated a variety of media, and then we looked at 7 different communities. So this was a very complex assessment. And with regards to past exposures, it's as we say here, in the past, children, pregnant women could have been exposed to amounts of mercury that were potentially harmful to health. And the pathways were, we have anecdotal evidence, pretty good anecdotal evidence that kids were swimming in the creek. And so during specific weeks, certain weeks from in the 56 to 58, these kids could have been exposed to levels of inorganic mercury, that's the one that affects the kidney, at levels that could have affected their kidney. That's what our estimates are showing, and it's right up there where it's just could be the problem, or it might not have been a problem. It just depends on how often they were out there and what kind of dose they got. But the estimated doses indicate it could have been in the past. Also, if prior to DOE cleaning up the Mercury in '96. If a child was out there playing in those two areas that were on that map, previous map, those levels in those areas were high enough where a child could have been exposed to inorganic mercury again at a level that might have affected their kidney or their renal health. A couple more conclusions here. Once again, in the 70s, 80s, and kind of in the 90s, within Poplar Creek, if someone was eating large amounts of fish, twice a week, from Poplar Creek, certain species, okay, that's how specific this is, there could be an increase of subtle neurodevelopmental effects on the child. It's a potential there. But for these to occur, the mother would have had to frequently eat, as I said, on an ongoing basis, the certain species just before or while they were pregnant or nursing. And then another issue that came up, there was anecdotal evidence that people went home with mercury from the facility. And if you came home with elemental mercury and it got into the home, the vapors will fill up that home pretty quick, and it could have affected, especially the children, inhaling those vapors. It's a very toxic substance. When you inhale it, it goes from your lungs right into your brain. Okay. People say, "Oh yeah, when I was there, I played with them. You were being exposed." And it's EPA deals with this. The state deals with this, where people get a hold of mercury, and they do a variety of things with it because it's fun to play with, whatever, and it always ends up being a problem. There were limitations, again, to our assessment because of lack of data going back in the 50s and 60s. It's just the nature of our business. We didn't have confidence in the information where we can make decisions. That was breathing elemental mercury in the Oak Ridge, Scarborough, and East Fork Poplar Creek area. Swallowing water in between 53 and 55. If kids were out there, we didn't have enough water data to make a determination. And then eating fish from East Fork Poplar Creek and Clinch River and Watts Bar in the 50s and 60s. We just don't have enough information and data to make an adequate decision about that. Okay, so that's all passed. That's all the work. Now I'm going to get to the issues I think that some of you may be interested in or concerned about. This is dealing with current exposure now. The current air, soil, sediment in the East Fork Poplar Creek floodplain area is not a public health hazard. Okay? Prior to 97, the levels were elevated. They cleaned it up. We were involved in that. DOE came up with a cleanup level, worked with the state and EPA. The community asked us, the city asked us to look at this. Is this protective of health? We evaluated those doses, estimated doses, and we determined that it was protective of health, the 400 parts per million, and it posed no threat to children or adults. And the soil was removed in 1996 and 97. Vegetables, produce that was grown in East Fork Poplar Creek and in the Oak Ridge area was all sampled. Not a public health hazard. Well below any health effects levels. Now for surface water, we looked at quite a bit of surface water data. I think 600 samples going back to 1990, 25 different locations. of those 605, the samples we had, 126 had mercury, 1 out of 5 had mercury. Only one sample in 92 was above the EPA, what they call the maximum contaminant level goal of 2 parts per million. And based on those, based on the exposure scenario we use as a child, and you see, that's the thing. What's the realistic exposure scenario? How likely? And talking to people and figuring out what's the scenario. One, it's posted, so most kids don't even play in it, or their parents wouldn't allow them. But if a kid ignored it, went out there, and swam for 3 hours for 18 days of a year, and they would likely swallow so much water that the dose would be lower than the EPA reference dose. And I think that's what I have here, is that it is, the estimated inorganic mercury dose is below the EPA reference dose. If you turn, just to help you get a feel for what this means, turn to figure 13. At the bottom is the EPA chronic EPA RFD. That's a reference dose. And this dose that we estimated, based on the scenario I just explained, is a little bit below that. But that EPA reference dose is based on studies. And those studies are those blue arrows above. So that lower blue arrow is the EPA reference dose, and then the blue arrows above are what that number was based on. So there is uncertainty factors in there where they're not quite sure, so they reduce where the health effects studies say the health effects are taking place, and they come up with a level that they know is protective of children and most sensitive populations, and that's what they do, and that's what they should do. The fish. The mercury in the fish, based on our assessment, is not a public health hazard. One, it's posted. So we assume it's posted, not many people are going to eat fish. Two, it's not a productive stream. So it's not like someone's going to get in there and eat a lot of fish out of at East Fort Poplar Creek. So based on that, and based on talking to people, we come up with a scenario where someone would eat 1 fish meal per month. So based on that 1 fish meal per month, we come out with some estimated doses. And if you go to figure 26, the range of our estimated exposures is that green shaded area at the bottom. And the top end of that is primarily children, okay? Their doses. So that's a range of doses that we estimated. And it's above the EPA reference dose, but it's below our ATSDR's level, which is the blue line. But the key is it's below the black line. That black line at the top, that's the National Academy of Sciences health effect level. That's a dose that they have come up with where they have found in studies, kids, moms being exposed over a long period of time, what they have found is a 5% increase in abnormal scores for they call it the Boston naming test, which is a vocabulary test and a recall test. And there's a 5% abnormal score for kids who had a certain dose. That dose. That's right here. So here's the doses we're estimating. The health effect doses are up here. It's below those levels. That's why we are saying it's not a public health hazard. Is it a regulatory hazard? Could be, based on the states and the EPA's regulations they have to follow. it could be above their reference dose, and so then they have to take actions because that is a protective level. We're trying to find out, is there any imminent threat? Is there anything going on right now that needs to be addressed? Is there any exposures we need to eliminate right now? And the signs are posted, and we think it's prudent to minimize your exposure, and that's a good thing. And Watts bar, we looked at Watts bar, and it's the same thing. If you turn the page of the handout I have here, it's figure 27. This green shaded area, it's a variety of exposures of one fish meal a month, one fish meal a week, 2 fish meals a week, and this high end is 2 fish meals a week. These doses here on the high end of this, they're above EPA's reference dose, they're above ATSDR's minimum risk level, but as you can see, they're below these where the health effects are actually being found. So we don't see an urgent health hazard. Could somebody maybe if someone ate 5-6 times a week and eating the biggest fish, because usually the big ones are the ones that have the mercury, and they don't follow the advisory and they're doing their own thing, then they eat a lot of fish, they may, I doubt it, but they may get up to that level. As I mentioned earlier, with the PCBs, our estimates said that the PCBs in the 90s were a health hazard. The risk assessment said they were a health hazard. So we went out and we tested people. We tested 116 people. We screened over 550 people to see who ate enough fish for us to even stick them and draw their blood. We ended up getting 116 people. We interviewed them, and their mean blood level was below the detection limit. Their aromatic mean was 5.2, and only one participant had a high level that was above what we called the 10, was just like a screening thing, and it was above the 10 part per billion. I think it was 20. I think their level was 20. And these people ate a lot of fish. On average, it was like 60-something grams a day, and we calculated all this and figured it out. It was quite a bit of fish. The average age was in their 50s. I have all those numbers if you're interested. But the bottom line is, we looked at the distribution of mercury in their blood, and we compared it to what's found in the general population in America. CDC goes around and with the NHANES studies, they go around and they test people, ask them all kind of questions, and they have this database of information. The range of exposures you have from those people eating a lot of fish in Watts bar are very similar to the range of exposures that's in the general public. It's not outside the norm. But it is prudent to minimize exposure. Follow the advisory, especially pregnant women, nursing mothers, and children. We wholeheartedly support that. Got to minimize exposures. Follow the EPA, FDA guidelines. They're in our document. Now, almost done. One of the things we do at our studies is say, should we do a follow-up health study? Should we see if we could link that exposure to some health endpoint? This caused this. Should we go there? Should we even think about going there? Well, we have some criteria we follow. And based on this criteria, we determine that additional health outcome data evaluations, additional studies, are not warranted or scientifically appropriate. And if anyone's interested, I'll be glad to sit down with them and go through the details of this, or you could read the section in the document, it explains it all. And our basic recommendations, DOE should make, there's one spot in the Mercury that's a little bit elevated, and it's in an undeveloped area of DOE, and we're just saying that they should control it, or if they're going to transfer that property, clean it up or whatever. Also, to prevent unnecessary exposure, there's mercury down in the channel of Watts Bar, the deep channel, and that should not be disturbed unless there's been careful review and understanding, and be careful. There's no reason to stir all that up. At least we don't see it, but there may be a reason down the line. I don't know. Follow the fish advisory. As I said, it's prudent public health practice to minimize your exposure. And the advisories allow people to make informed decisions about what they're going to eat, the types of fish. You could eat the fish, just follow the advisory. They're not saying don't fish for anything, and you can't eat anything. Follow the advisory. Fish is good for you. We're not trying to scare anybody. Fish is really good for you. If you want any information on any of our work, it's on the website, ATSDR website. As I said, you can get the details, meeting minutes from our FACA meetings where they have all these discussions like you have, videos that explain our process, what we've done, interviews with people that were involved in the community, issues we dealt with. There are videos there to explain it, or you can read the summary documents. And then, as I said, in each health assessment, there's community concerns that we addressed and have documented a response and tried to clarify the health issue. Thank you.
Questions? Greg?
Thank you, Jack. I wrote a bunch of notes in here, but when you got to the end, I'll summarize it this way. You all have been involved since 1991.
Yes.
In looking at this. You talked about the fact that these contaminants have been prevalent going back to the 50s. So we have a 60-plus year test cell. My understanding, there have been no, zero, none, nada increases of any of the diseases that are associated with these contaminants in this area? Over a 60-year period? No, I mean, you're talking about unborn children, and you were talking about kidney disease and a few other things, but there's no documented of an increased level of any of these?
One of the things our advisory committee requested, look at the health, look at, like you're pointing out, where's the data and the health data? And so we moved forward, and we decided that we would look at some of the health data that the state had. We actually looked at the cancer data. Okay, and so we looked at the 8 counties in the area. Let's see, I'm trying to get my facts. I want to make sure I'm real clear about this since I'm on video here. I don't know where it's. I got to be real careful about this one. We looked at, I think, 40 different cancers in the 8 counties over a 10-year period that the state had data. And what we found is in some cancers, they were a little bit elevated in some counties, but other counties it was another one that was elevated. And the purpose of doing this, it's a descriptive epidemiology. It's just kind of, it's not a cause and effect type study. It's like, what's out there? Is there any trends? And we didn't see any trends.
The research and national defense facilities of the Oak Ridge Reservation are vital parts of our nation's scientific community. To continue to meet these needs, parts of the reservation require cleanup from the impacts of years of energy research. The Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board is the voice of the community, providing input to the U.S. Department of Energy on its environmental cleanup of the reservation. To learn more about this important work, you're invited to attend meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board.